Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a terrible homeowner association neighbor starts a fight with me after I try to get into a public HOA pool. This guy insists that disabled people are disgusting and are not allowed to be in the same pool as everyone else. He then ends up destroying my wheelchair and I honestly could not be more upset. Here is what happened. The first one goes like this. So I was thrilled when I got the news that a pool was being built in my neighborhood. It was within the HOA and you did not have to pay as long as you were part of the HOA, which was mandatory anyway. Personally, I am confined to a wheelchair and swimming is extremely good exercise for me. Also, due to the ADA, any public pool has to be outfitted with a device that is basically a chair that lowers me into the water. Then I can swim around to my content and come out the same way. Due to a nasty summer cold, I was not able to go when it first opened, but instead a couple weeks later. I got on my swim trunks, threw a towel and went to the pool. It was close enough that I didn't need to take my car and could just wheel myself right into it. I was on cloud 9, but that only lasted for about 5 minutes after getting there. I located the chair and just transferred myself over to it when a man I knew was part of the HOA stopped me. HOA dude, whoa buddy, what do you think you're doing? Me, swimming? I mean, it's a public pool after all. HOA guy, not for people like you. Don't you have some special needs pool instead of making ours look bad? Me, I can swim just fine, don't worry. Plus, I am part of the HOA, so I have every right to be here. You even have the pool handicap accessible, so I really don't see what your problem is. HOA idiot, my problem is that we don't want disabled freaks like you making the HOA look bad. Me, you cannot ban me for being in a wheelchair. HOA guy, just watch me pal. He started walking away from the pool, which should sound nice, but he was taking my chair with him. I got zero mobility without it, so I was now stuck in place just having to watch what happened. Other people were watching as well and somebody asked me what was happening and I told him that the guy walked off with my wheelchair. I do want to praise the guys who ran after him and tried to help, but they were not fast enough though and the guy trashed my wheelchair both figuratively and literally. He slammed it against the ground until it was bent and a wheel flew off. Then he lifted it over his head and threw it into one of those big green dumpsters that was at the back of the exit of the pool. I was mortified and scared because I had no idea what to do. The only saving grace was that I had my belongings in one of those reclining pool chairs instead of on my wheelchair. I then asked a random guy to please go get me my phone because I was basically stuck. They offered to help carry me over so I was not stuck at the pool edge. I usually don't like getting carried, but with crazy HOA dudes around, I did not want to risk an accident in the water. I called my sister who lives in the same HOA neighborhood but about 5 minutes away from me. She has a spare really crappy wheelchair for emergencies and I told her what happened. You can imagine that she was pissed and dropped everything to bring it over. I had people checking on me and trying to stop this HOA guy from getting near me ever again. They were not happy either with what they witnessed and told me that they would testify for me. My sister came with my chair and HOA guy took this opportunity to throw another fit and tried to grab it to presumably destroy it too. My sister got right up in his face and started screaming at him so loudly that he had no choice but to back off. I wanted to leave, but my sister insisted that we stay and call the police to file an official report. I learned at a young age that arguing with an angry older sister is never a good idea. The police came and this guy had a wildly different story than everybody else. He was claiming that I was being inappropriate and having my private parts out in front of children. So he had tried to ban me and that was when I used my wheelchair as a weapon to attack him. He also claimed that I was not even meant to be there because I lived in a home for people with disabilities which was outside of the HOA. Of course, the police got the real story from no less than 10 people and my license that proved that I actually had my own house and lived in this HOA. The file was made, but since the issue was more civil than criminal, I was gonna have to take him to court personally. The police report could be used in the case more as showing the sides of the story and having witness statements. The court did not get to my case until fall, which meant I lost out on an entire summer of the pool, and I'm sure that the HOA guy marked that down as a victory. That made me angrier than anything else, and I was suing him for violating the ADA laws and destruction of property. A new wheelchair is not cheap, and my insurance was not gonna cover it just because the other one got destroyed. That meant if I wanted a chair like my old one, I was gonna have to pay out of pocket, which I did. Since I use a manual one, it was about $4,000. For the ADA violations, it gets a little bit more tricky, so I just want to break it down for a minute. Since he was part of the HOA, they were getting separate charges and fines for breaking it as an organization of sorts. For me, I was personally suing him for discrimination and using the ADA laws as my defense. In court, he changed his story from the police statement, but still different from the truth. He claimed all my witnesses were lying and that I was not mentally competent enough to know what was going on. I got a master's degree, and this guy thinking my leg's not working meant that something was wrong with my brain made me question his mental competence instead. He also made a statement that me existing at the pool was somehow discrimination for the HOA because it would devalue their homes. He also kept randomly putting the word disabled in quotes like he was implying that I was faking it, which made less sense than anything else. I won to the shock of nobody except for the HOA guy. In total, he was being forced to pay around $200,000 in total, between my chair, the discrimination, and the HOA fines for breaking the ADA. I think the actual HOA got out of paying the fines and throwing him under the bus, saying that he was not speaking on their behalf officially. I don't really know, but I just know he got stuck with paying for all of it. The HOA president actually apologized to me and welcomed me to use the pool anytime once it opened again the next summer. He also told me that the now ex-HOA guy had a permanent ban at the pool for his behavior, which was just a cherry on top. And yeah, ripe stars, I really don't know what it is with entitled HOA busybodies and them hating on disabled people. You know, the funny thing is, these people are so worried about their homes getting devalued, but actually having a Karen like this in the neighborhood is probably the biggest reason for your house getting devalued. I mean, who wants to live next to a person like this? But anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video. Thank you so much. The next one is titled Decades of Revenge. My brother is a few years older than I am. When we were young, we lived in a rural area and had to walk places often. The school bus stop was around a quarter mile away, for instance. Without fail, he would always walk faster than I would, not just 3 years older and longer legs faster, but he would push his pace so that I would have to jog/run and struggle to keep up, all the while yelling at me for being too slow. 30 plus years later, I am living overseas and my family comes to visit. My brother arrived a couple days earlier due to his vacation schedule at work. I played tour guide, and in the intervening years he has gotten a bit out of shape. Now, I'm not about to run a marathon, but as we are walking around town, I noticed that he is breathing heavily, puffing away trying to keep pace. He asked me to slow down. I did, for a moment, but consistently throughout the day, I kept ever so slightly increasing my pace. 30 plus years petty, but revenge at last. And yeah, ripe stars, talk about long-term revenge. Props to OP. The next one is titled Revenge Done Right. So I was driving home from work and traffic was backed up pretty badly for a few miles. It was stop and go. When I get stuck in that, I will usually back about 75 feet off the car in front of me so that I can hold a pace and move at a slow but constant roll like the semi-trucks do. This way, I'm not participating in the bumper-to-bumper move and brake like the rest of the smooth-brain drivers. However, some dude in an Acura crossover was behind me, and I guess he was getting upset because I was not 2 feet from the car in front of me, driving like a smooth brain. So he gets up on my butt and starts beeping his horn at me. Lol, I think to myself as I turn up my radio, but then he starts flashing his brights at me, which is where I get annoyed. He is in one of those Acuras that has the super bright LED headlights. My car is much lower than his, so his low beams are already pretty bright in my mirrors. Honestly, bright enough that I don't want to look into them. The first time he flashed his high beams, it put spots in my vision for a moment. It genuinely hurt my eyes. After the first flash, he waits for about 10 seconds, beeps his horn, and then flashes me again. Now I'm getting pissed. I'm thinking, where the F do you want me to go? Do you really think being 2 feet from the car in front of you will make traffic move faster? And then he flashes me a third time, but this time he held them on for about 15 seconds. Time for the gloves to come off. During those 15 seconds, as I'm looking away from my mirrors, I see my 14,000 lumen searchlight sitting in my passenger seat, at which point I'm immediately overcome by a wave of chaotic, lawful excitement. What he had just set in motion cannot be stopped. I think to myself, oh buddy, you just opened the wrong can of worms. You're gonna learn today. I grabbed the flashlight and set it to its absolute maximum of 14,000 lumen brightness setting. The flashlight has a sensor in it to automatically dim the light if facing down on a table, because otherwise the diodes would get so hot they would melt the lens. The 14,000 lumen setting is so intense, the 57 watt-hour battery can only hold it for 180 seconds before the flashlight automatically notches down to a measly 9,500 lumens. However, during those 180 seconds, the light will burn through 15% of its battery power. For reference on just how bright this is, the literal sun emits a luminosity of 11,000 lumens per square foot on a bright and clear day. I turn around and aim it straight out the back of my rear window. My car is pretty noisy, so before I turn it on, I rev up my engine to make sure Captain Smoothbrain is eyes forward when I violate his retinas with the full force of an afternoon sun. I hit the power button and can only imagine the freight train of shock and pain that plowed over this man. It was so bright, his automatic headlights shut off because the car thought it was daytime. With the light on, I could see him clear as glass through his tinted windshield. He was covering his eyes and looking down. Probably he was screaming. I watched him try and flip down his sun visor, but his hand couldn't find it as I thought to myself, burn dude, burn. I imagine my facial expression was similar to that of a 6-year-old roasting insects with a magnifying glass on a bright summer day. After about 5 seconds of blinding light, I took mercy and shut it off. He proceeded to back way the hell off and move over to a different lane. Was this an unsafe thing for me to do? Absolutely. Was this illegal? Almost certainly. Was it warranted though? Without question. Possibly the highlight of my year. Anyway, drive safe and don't be a dick to the car in front of you. Because they might just have the tools to teach you a lesson. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm pretty sure the revenge certainly was not safe, but this guy got what he deserved in my opinion. Recently, especially here in Thailand, I don't know why, but I notice more and more people using their high beams when they are driving in a little city/village, especially at night, and I don't know why people do this. To me, people like this that don't care about blinding others are clearly psychopaths. Anyway, the next one is titled, I Will Take Down Your Company. I'm a typical simple guy who just likes relaxing and was born with the proverbial silver spoon in my mouth. I am the black sheep of my family and a middle child to boot, double whammy, but I at least have a little brain and some luck which I kind of use on a day-to-day basis. Due to my parents' connections, I managed to get into lucrative schools in my country, did my military service and was promoted upward to captain and later on was shipped off to college out of country. I've never been too close with many people apart from my circle of friends and I prefer it that way. After my college, I was employed in the government, you guessed it, family connections, and after a few years I was able to use my name to get ahead and meet people who helped me set up several businesses in my area, a coastal city where this story happens. So the money I used was generally allowances, small inheritances from my late grandma, some investments, a fund that was started when I was a baby, and money gifted to me by family. Basically an attempt not to leave me broke enough to embarrass them, even though I am a simple low-maintenance fellow. My businesses are booming since the coastal area we live in attracts a lot of tourists, local and international, and of course some locals who wish to mingle with the tourists to get green cards, pen pals, spouses and such. The typical coastal city, I guess. So anyway, the incident, as a proprietor of my businesses, I have most if not all of my staff on salary, since it is the best way for them to gain benefits and is easier for me as a business owner tax-wise. Tipping is more of a gift typically since we don't have a tipping culture, and I have my staff on comprehensive medical insurance which has additional dental and optical on top of the national governmental healthcare medical scheme. Our government hospitals provide all services free, but wait times for elective surgeries are exhausting. And by the way guys, this sounds more and more like Thailand. But anyway, we also have a mandatory legal requirement to provide employees with retirement benefit savings, minimum of 21 working days leave, I give 30, and my businesses offer paid overtime. Never mind, does not sound like Thailand anymore. Unhindered medical leave for surgery as well, and serious conditions which can be extended, as well as allowances to seek treatment, treatment, such as chemo or dialysis. One of my female employees, an older lady who is brilliant and had moved up the ranks to manager and was adored by everybody, was booked for a hysterectomy since, as she told me, she was at risk of cervical cancer as her mother had passed from it a few years back, and since she already had 4 kids, it was the most logical step. She did her due diligence and found a private hospital which was in our system where she could have the procedure done. On the planned date, she applied for leave days, which we obviously rejected since this fell under the scope of medical leave. She went on to have the procedure successfully and had a quick recovery time. The bill was to be catered for by the company insurance, and we had made sure to get all the necessary pre-authorizations. A few months later, she came to work looking distraught, and in all honesty, we thought that she had been told that she had gotten cancer since she had asked for a day off to go for review and tests, but what happened was way worse. So she had been given a bill by the hospital since the insurance had refused to pay for it, citing that it was not in the scope of coverage. We were livid since we had made sure everything was in order. I sent my accounts manager to go have a talk with the insurance people as we tried to calm her down. The manager came back super angry and told me that basically after showing them the evidence, the insurance people just told him to buzz off. I decided to personally go visit that office and get a clear understanding of what was happening. They kept me waiting for an hour and even after that had the audacity to inform me the director from the head office who was in the area had declined to meet me because he was quote-unquote busy. I was pissed to the high heavens, so I decided to go to their head office in the capital city, a 2-hour flight. The head office was no help and informed me that they had revised their policy and that it was not covered. I asked when the policy was revised and they informed me a month prior. I informed them the surgery was done 5 months prior and we had all the documentation. They claimed that it was 12 months retrospective, and I inquired why I was not informed of it since this was big news, and I filed policies with them and they told me that they had informed their large clients and would inform the other clients when their insurance were due for renewal. I demanded to speak to their boss, company vice president, since the CEO was not around, and they boldly told me he had no time for me and frankly that, in verbatim, "We are a large company and have no time to argue semantics with low-end clients. If you don't like it, you can frankly leave and find a new insurance company." So now my revenge. If I'd been initially pissed, I was now full-blown mad. I was livid and filled with rage. In all my years I may have experienced some disrespect and I accepted it to not make problems, but this time it went too far. I decided in the heat of the moment to switch everything and be done with them. I flew back home and just plain went to the hospital and settled the bill in full and took the receipt to my employee, who initially insisted that she would do anything to pay me back, but I refused since it was in no way her fault and I'll be damned if she pays for something that was way out of her control. I had a few days to cool down and talked with my directors. The words still etched on my mind. I asked how long it would take us to switch to another insurance. They went ahead and checked out a few large rivals of the insurance we had and discovered that if we switched, it would take 6 months for the new insurance to provide full coverage. The particular firm we picked, who I will call New Insurance, offered us a way better deal to the one we had, and not only comprehensive cover, dental and optical, they also included mental health cover, physiotherapy and occupational therapy cover, rehabilitative services, mobility device acquisition aka prosthetics and wheelchairs for some of the disabled employees, and smart cards for direct payment on outpatient visits, kind of like a debit card, and a dedicated team full of relationship managers, death and funeral benefits, and an expanded coverage area, plus up to 6 dependents plus spouse cover. It would cost me a little more, but I did not really care. The people who dealt with us from our previous insurance, who I will call Old Insurance, seemed unfazed that I was pulling my company from them since they thought it was just a small business. They looked puzzled when I came in with several people and a few boxes of documents. What they failed to realize was that apart from that one business, which is a restaurant, I have 3 popular bars, a cab company, a hotel resort, cleaning service chain, a building and residential guard service, and several rental buildings in the town and around the country. Their shock was compounded when they were informed by the lawyer just who I am, and the shock, confusion and panic when they heard my family name, which was an extremely satisfying sight. Cue the pleading and attempted negotiations and apologies. It was so big that the news reached their head office, who sent not only their director, the one who was apparently too big to see me, but also their chief legal officer, chief financial officer, and finally, the president of the company. I somehow also earned a personal call from their CEO, who was abroad. No amount of sweet talking was changing my mind, and by the end of 6 weeks we had completely removed ourselves from the old insurance. It was now a waiting game to the beginning of the new insurance cover, and we really hoped that no one would become unwell by that time, but we were ready just in case. In that waiting time, and after the new insurance commenced, I talked to my friends and my family on one of my holiday visits. My older brother's kids adore me, and my family kind of realized that they were a-holes to me and are trying to re-enter my life, and then thought that that was that. So, the aftermath of the story, my friends and family took my words and also pulled their business from the insurance to other insurances. The company took such a huge hit, and when COVID came around and was a big deal, they were barely floating. They went into receivership soon after and were acquired by the insurance I had moved to, who happened to be their greatest rival. The directors and CEO were given their golden parachutes and resigned, and most of their employees were luckily retained apart from the senior executives, including the ones who told my manager to buzz off in a cruel twist of irony. The building they were operating on in our town was sold, and if you guessed I purchased it, you would be absolutely correct. I decided to remodel the inside and turn it to a business rental space. All in all, it was a bit of a sweet payback, and wherever they are, I hope those disrespectful guys learned that everyone is human and they are not above anyone, and remember that karma is a cold and heartless witch. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I did not expect this outcome to the story at all. In the beginning, I wasn't even sure if I want to read this story because I don't really like stories about rich people, but I have to say this was one of the best revenge stories we have ever read. Let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed the story or not. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.